Thanks for joining everyone to the Recycle Right at Work Janitorial Best Practices webinar for business recycling. We will get started here promptly at noon, and we'll get you out of here by 12:30. All right, everyone, it is noon, so we are going to go ahead and get started so we can stay on time here. Thanks so much for joining us. It's a beautiful day out here in Central Ohio. This is the Recycle Right at Work Janitorial Best Practices for Business Recycling webinar. We're excited to have our wonderful panelist, Mike Minnix, who's a specialist in this space. So we'll get to introductions here shortly. But we're gonna have a good time and we'll get you out of here by 12:30, if not a little sooner. Before we get started, just some housekeeping to take care of here. We do send out a survey to capture feedback about the work that we do and the webinars we give, so please be on the lookout for that. Please remember that you are on mute and you'll remain on mute as an attendee. If you do have questions, you can always put those in the chat. This meeting is being recorded, and this is a webinar format, so again, please feel free to put questions in there, but we'll kind of run through our slide deck, talk about the things that we came here to talk about today, and again, hopefully later on you guys can view the recording as well if you have others that want to learn about this topic in a nice, hopefully compact session. There are documents that can be found in the handout section. So on your screen, you're seeing an example of what those might look like. There's 3 for this webinar. Our best practices for container setup document, which we developed to help kind of keep container recycling sustainable. But there's a lot of nuance in kind of the work that goes on there. So that document kind of helps demystify some of what we know to be best practices for your containers. The PDF of this presentation is also available for download, so I do encourage you to take a look at that as well. And then we have a poster that can go in your custodial closets or spaces where custodial staffs work out of that kind of reiterates some of the best practices that we know to be true for most recycling programs. So that document is there for commercial recycling programs. Our recycling programs in our homes, at least here in Central Ohio, will operate differently. So just keep that in mind when we're viewing that poster. Those are made for commercial buildings. And then when using GoToWebinar, if you ever happen to lose the screen for any reason, just find the little snowflake icon and it'll bring the webinar right back up to you. It does occasionally like to time out on us. So for introductions, it's great to be with you all. I'm on our business programs team, so I work with business industry, multifamily properties to help encourage recycling, waste reduction, reuse, as well as composting. So really, we want to send less to landfill, and my program area is businesses and multifamily properties, which is why this is such a good topic for us, is because we always have to work with janitorial staffs when working to do a business recycling program, or at least most of the time. And then with me, I'll let Mike jump in and introduce himself.
Well, hi there, everybody. Michael Minnix. I am the owner Chief Consultant and Dumpster Diver of Goodland Sustainability Consultants. I've been working in the sustainability field for about 20 years. In the past 10 years, I've recently started a janitorial company. We do maintenance work, facility maintenance work, of course, janitorial work, and large-scale event work here in Columbus, Ohio.
Thanks, Mike. We'll get right back to Mike here after we kind of get through some of our introductory slides here. We'll bring in back the expert. So in terms of our team, as we continue to kind of walk through it, we have a robust team and we have program areas that support really any sector of waste reduction. So again, I'm business and multifamily, but we do tours of the landfill, which we always encourage both for businesses. You can bring down a group specifically, or we also have public tours that are a great time to bring the family and the friends. It really is an interesting space to come see where all of our waste is going, because we really don't think about it that often. And we can see how many wasted resources we have being buried here that could go elsewhere, like to a good composting program or recycling program. So we love Kim's work, and we love to bring people here to see kind of what we do and what we're trying to do here to make sure the landfill lasts a little longer. We have grants for your nonprofits, business organizations, religious institutions. We do outreach, so bring us to an event. If you got a local farmers market, if you want us to table at your green team day or some sort of celebration, we're always happy to do that. Event vendor fair, things like that. We have food waste teams, schools teams, and as well as we do help the communities out with the work that they do in these spaces. So really have someone to help you in any circumstance. Our vision is a community that is environmentally safe and resourceful. So I like to kind of distill this down to we want to extend the life of the landfill. We want to keep our landfill healthy and safe. We want to make sure the material that does go there is handled in a safe way, and that nobody is sick because of the waste that we generate. And I think we do a great job of that here in Central Ohio. So we run lots of programs. Big team obviously would have lots of programs. So these are just a few of the high-level overview. Our compost drop-offs that we either support the cities with and they operate, or in some cases we operate. Our school champions programs, we offer 52 drop-offs around our communities for people who maybe don't have access to recycling in their homes or multifamilies or condos. We do special collection events like yard signs and household hazardous waste events, and you can find those on our website, where you can either take those or some of the mobile collection events that we do with communities. We do tours, so you can see we actually help schools pay for that school bus to bring those kids here to see their waste streams, which is a program that I am particularly proud of here that we're able to offer. We have event container loan programs, so if you're doing a public event where the public is allowed to come, you can actually borrow containers from us to help collect, which is a great option as well, and we help support yard waste here, among many other things that we do. But the reason we're here is more waste is being generated every single year. It's no secret that Columbus is growing, and frankly, really all of Ohio is growing. And with growth comes more trash. So this is our most recent waste characterization study done in 2018. And via this study that we can see that our waste stream here is highly made up of recyclable materials or compostable materials. So materials that don't belong in the landfill is the best way we can say it. 24% of the material that is coming in we think maybe should belong in a landfill, and that is the right place for it to go and be safely disposed of. But we do have this huge amount of stuff coming to our landfill every single day that we really don't believe belongs here, and really already does have outlets for. So that's why we want to help your businesses and want to work with our janitorial staffs to have really strong diversion programs so we can extend the life of this landfill and keep it going for years to come. So as we kind of get into the meat of things, we're going to kind of move into our specific kind of tips and tricks and things that we know to be important in this space. So as we talk about these things, we're going to kind of talk about what we have to ensure a sustainable program, and then we're going to bring Mike in as we kind of go through these to kind of give the perspective of the other side when you're working with the janitorial staff. Like, what are we not thinking about? What do we not know? What are the things we need to give his team to be successful as well? So before we get to that part, I am just going to call out our Business Champions program. So this is kind of why we work with so many janitorial staffs, is we have our Business Recycling and Food Waste Champions programs. These programs are designed to help you stand up recycling and compost programs within your office buildings. They help any size business that is for profit. It is free containers for inside of your building. We include the signage, as you can see on here. We can customize the signage to fit your recycling program or your needs. We can even co-brand if you have really strong brand guidelines. We can absolutely do that. And then it also offers reimbursement for starting new service. So let's say you already have recycling, but you want to start composting. We'll help get you free containers for both recycling and composting. And we can offer that reimbursement for that new compost program. It's 6 months of hauling reimbursement that we give out. And if you don't have either, then you can apply for both, and we would help you with that first 6 months of recycling service as well as that first 6 months of compost service. So it's really there to help lessen the burden of starting a program. So we're really excited about this, but this is why we're working with so many janitorial staffs, is we have this really great program that people in Franklin County are taking advantage of. So our first tip as we get into the meat of things, we want you to collaborate with your custodial teams. It's so important that we involve them basically from day one. There's going to be education needed. There's going to be evaluations of the space, what we're collecting. There can be waste audits. All of that stuff can be supported by your janitorial staff, but even if they're not the ones implementing or doing those evaluations, they always have to be part of this process. They got to be aware of, maybe for the waste audit, where to put the trash, where to pull the bags, if a procedure is going to change. So our first tip is day one, open communication, and kind of bring them to the table. So I'm going to kind of let Mike jump in here and kind of explain, the levels of that. We kind of have two different levels, this kind of macro level here about what value that can add, and then we'll kind of get into the micro level next.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. I appreciate that. And I really wanted to get in here and talk about the why this is important going into the future, and why janitorial teams need to be on top of these things, and also why facilities teams need to be on top of these things. So if we're talking about increasing recycling rates, that's obviously comes with increased operational efficiencies. Sorting time is saved. We have then increased or decreased, I should say, operational costs, but these are in no particular order. And I will say why I got in the janitorial world, which I think is important. I do consulting projects typically for large scale corporations or municipalities around the city and state country. And I'd be sitting in these boardrooms and we'd be talking about sustainability and implementing it for that particular company. And I'd look at everybody in the room. I go, this is fantastic. I'm glad we're all sitting here, but us in this board table and in this boardroom right now are not the ones taking out the waste at the end of the night. We have to make sure everybody on the team is on board with the program to make it successful and make it sustainable over the course of time. The only way these things will work is if we have consistency in our janitorial staffs and in their operations throughout the day and night. Some of the benefits of these things obviously are increased operational efficiency, higher recycling rates, meeting company benchmarks, which I think is a huge opportunity that janitorial can help with. Very rarely, especially with large scale operations, Fortune 500 companies and businesses of many sizes, they have ingrained in their ethos as an organization sustainability and things that and goals that they want to reach, just like the city has, just like SWACO's even putting out there for us. We're going to help these companies meet those benchmarks. And I think it's a very efficient and simple way to do it through recycling. There isn't a increase in cost. It's just, again, reimagining kind of how we do these things on the back end. On the flip side, there's also the positive tenant perception of these things. It looks good for the building owner. It looks good for the business. And then one of the biggest things that I like to talk about is the possible reduction in operational costs. If a business is only removing municipal solid waste, it's expensive. It costs more to remove waste than it does recyclable material. So if we can increase those recycling rates, we could potentially decrease those municipal solid waste hauling rates. Another big thing from me in the janitorial side is market differentiation. How can we be different from other janitorial companies that are out there? How can businesses be different from other businesses that are out there by implementing these programs? I think it's a very important part of what I do in my field. Again, we want to help these companies reach their goals. We also then become an ingrained part of them reaching their goals. They need us to help them get there, and it helps us stay, because the janitorial world can be rough. 30-day contracts. any way that we can stand out and be a better member of the team, that's what we want to do. And I think others will do too.
Yeah, and I think, Mike, I'll jump in and say, in the work that we do, I was looking through some of my most recent, and over the past 6 months, of all the people who've reached out to us for support in this business program area, I looked at it. 65% of the reach outs that I got happened because they had a company directive pushing them to do this work. And we do kind of capture why people reach out to us. So I think it is there. Kind of going back to these company benchmarks are happening. We're still seeing some of these EPR laws and stuff as we see pullback here in the U.S. federally. These companies still have bases in California, for example. If you have a single employee or bring a single bottle of soap or something to California, you become liable for their regulation and you have to report. The same thing is true with Europe. And so we still see companies moving towards this and needing these things. So I think it's so important to understand. And then kind of last thing that I'll kind of reiterate, Mike, that you brought up is, we've done a few of these kind of higher, I'd say bigger buildings, companies that you would know here in Central Ohio. And every single one of them just comes back and says how excited their staff is to have recycling or composting, that they appreciate the companies thinking about it. And let's be honest, nobody wants a trashy building, and that's what good janitorial staffs like yours, Mike, help us maintain a nice, clean looking building. Like if it was our own home, right? That's what we want out of a building. Nobody wants dusty, nasty buildings, right? So your teams kind of doing these things effectively, opening these lines of communication can really help. And so kind of we'll get, we kind of have the macro now, so we'll move to kind of the more micro. Now we've got our team, we've kind of, you've helped us create that value proposition. Now we need to collaborate with you on the details, right? So kind of talk to us about, now your team's in there, we've kind of got over the why, we're excited to do it, and now we're going to collaborate you on kind of like, hey, we got to go into this, we got to make this happen. Kind of talk to us about that.
Absolutely. From a building standpoint, what you're going to want to do is ultimately recheck and look through your recycling contracts, seeing what is specific to your particular hauler, because there are some that have different needs. Some are able to take bags, some are incapable of taking bags. So just kind of find, if you currently do have a recycling program, how to be better. That would be a way to go through it. If not, obviously work with Swaco on their business champions program. It is a fantastic program and extremely useful, and the knowledge they can bring, again, can be extremely helpful in implementing something like this. But I want to come back to, this is not rocket science in any way. If we can, again, communicate these things from building to janitorial team, there are a few things that need to change to make this happen. In my experience, it's almost as simple as creating a color-coded bag system. A lot of buildings that I go into currently, they'll use black bags and only black bags. As the janitorial team will collect the waste at the end of the night, they tie it up, they throw it in a push cart or whatever mechanism they're using to move it through the building. And they're all black bags. By the time you get out to your dumpster, you're not going to know which bag is which by weight or by feel. They're all going typically in the trash dumpster. Again, on the flip side of that, obviously we need to use black bags. Those go in the municipal solid waste containers. Clear bags will go in the recycling containers. And again, we have a color-coded system for our teams to use. It's very simple. It's something that they're used to seeing. And again, then we can create that consistency and that habit of doing some of these things. And another very big part of what I try to do is make everything multilingual. My team is multilingual. I don't speak Spanish. I'm trying to get better at it. But having these instructions, because a lot of times the symbols are pretty universal, but the explanation of how or why it needs to be done just needs to be had. Once everybody's on board, we're not creating more work for people. We're just creating a more simplified system of collection and disposal. Again, if we can talk about saving facilities real money by doing the right thing and doing the environmentally sustainable thing, I think we're in a really good place. And again, a lot of these places I go into, when we start talking about sustainability, they automatically assume that's going to be expensive, hard to do. It's going to take a lot of oversight. They don't. If you can create a simplistic system like we can do here, implementation just becomes easier and easier.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, to kind of riff off that is, what we see is this idea of, lots of change out in these spaces. So you might have a morning person or an afternoon person, um, you know, doing some of this work throughout the day as containers get full or need change or maybe needed to be picked back up from a previous day. Then you kind of have your night shift who comes in after your staff leaves and kind of does that big collection of everything that's left, that clean sweep. And then there's people in between doing kind of day porter service and things like that. So it's really on our end, it is really important that we have clear communication in the best way to communicate to those folks. And it needs to be across the board, right? So we need to make sure that each one of those groups of people who may or may not be coming in the building have a clear system that they can follow and they understand. So even when you get somebody who calls out sick or whatever it might be, as soon as they open that custodial door, as soon as they get their instructions for that building for the day, it's clear, it's obvious, it can't be messed up. Because even the best program implemented by the most well-meaning, sustainability manager or office manager or whatever person has reached out to us, we get lots of HR people get assigned this frequently, this task. They can do a great job, we can do a great job, but if we haven't communicated with the custodial team at the end of the day, if they're just grabbing the bags and chucking them in any dumpster they want, we're going to have contamination in the recycling, or our recycling isn't going to make it to a recycler. It's going to end up in the landfill, and we want to avoid both of those things. So it's a really important part of a sustainable program. And again, it's why it's the first step for us is to open that line of communication and make sure that your custodial team is on board with doing this work, because it's quite hard to do it without them.
Well, Sean, I'll jump into, and when going into buildings and talking about sustainability programs, again, they assume that it's expensive, but they are typically thinking about things like solar panels or high capital investment programs that are expensive. They take time to implement. There could be a number of factors involved. Like the simplest thing that any company can do to be more sustainable is recycling in their office. Again, like these are really no cost. Again, Swaco can help cover some of these costs, but it's immediate impact. It's low maintenance as long as you get the janitorial teams on board.
Love that, Mike. So yeah, so as we move along, we've talked to our janitorial staff. Now we're going to talk about containers. And the rest of these, these are kind of bread and butter for what we do for any program, no matter what space we're talking about. So we always want to push centralized collection points. And so I'll give you the anecdote, and Mike, you can maybe speak to this if you want. But we moved an office building that had 650 cubicles. Each cubicle had its own trash and recycling container that was being serviced or had to be serviced nightly if it was used. We actually moved them to what's called centralized collection. So take those away from their desks, and now you have to get up and go to a larger container, maybe near the break room or near the center of the building, something to that effect. And so everyone's getting up and using those larger containers instead of having one at their desk. Well, one, HR teams and health and wellness teams always love this because we know sitting at our desks is not healthy for us. So it's a great reason to get up to have to throw away our banana peel or our can. But second, it allowed the custodial team, and one of their main gripes with this team was the building wasn't being dusted, cleaned, vacuumed, mopped, etc. And what ended up being the case was the custodial team spent so much time taking these bins out, they did not have time to clean the building with the crew they had there at night. So they either had to add more crew, which adds cost, and nobody wants that, or we had to have a solution, which means going to these central collection points, and it actually saved them money. And the custodial team was able to clean the building more, and really everybody won in that case. So, I can't speak to that enough. That is kind of a best practice. Sometimes staffs can be a little bit resistant to taking away their trash can at their desk, but we promise they get over it fast, and it really is a better system. Bin sizes and types, right sizing your program is really important, and then we always have the twin the bin concept, which this next slide does kind of a great job. We know people have 1 second to decide where they're going to put something. Generally speaking, they're going to make that very fast snap decision on, is this a recyclable material, is a landfill, and if we're adding compost, now we've got a third decision to make. So super important on these community collection points that we always want to twin the bin, and then we always want to have really clear signage. And if ever we can actually put signage of what kind of materials specifically you have in your building, that can be even better. So if you have a little grab and go cafe or something, and we can make sure that what you're selling in that cafe is captured in our signage. That's always really strong. You can see here, as we talked about, black and clear bags to clearly differentiate what stream we're dealing with. And then if we have our desk side recycling and we've decided to stick with that, again, it does matter the hauler that you're working with. Different haulers have different rules, but generally speaking, recycling needs to be clean and loose. And so we don't put a bag, as you can see in there. And then we have this visual separation going on, that our waste caddy, that little black bin, is smaller than that big blue bin. And that's on purpose to tell people that at our desks, we generate more recyclable material than we generate waste. So that visual cue is actually really strong to help encourage people with this behavior. So we do feel strongly about, instead of 2 equal sized bins, we really love these waste caddies. And we have them, we use them here in the office. I used them at other offices, and we don't ever actually get complaints about it once people start using them. Initially, when you see it, it looks small, but when you really think about what's at your desk, it really is mostly recycling. And then as we go through the signage, we have our sign maker tool here at at recycleright.org, which you can get to from swaco.org if you can't navigate there directly. So we can make any sign work for any space that you have. Graphic images work the best. They should match what your hauler accepts, which is why we're so excited about the sign maker tool, because different haulers do have different rules. It's one of the big parts that Swaco helps you navigate when you implement a program, as we help you figure out what your hauler takes and how they want it. There are some recycling haulers here locally who are going to ask you for a clear bagged bag full of recycling material. There are several others who are going to want it clean and loose, so we help you navigate some of the nuance there. And then we can help you make this sign to match exactly what materials they take, or more importantly, what materials you're most seeing in your space. Through a visual waste audit or whatever that might be, we can really identify what makes the most sense for you. And then even in some cases, as we make these signs, we can kind of pull that professional bleed, make some edits, and we've even added co-branding for several partners here to make sure they have their green team logo or whatever their needs are. So people really seem to love that, because then it kind of feels like their own program, and they see, here's our green team logo. They're kind of taking some accountability for the work they're doing. So we love that. And if you're a little scared of making your own sign, that's okay. We have pre-made signs that kind of hit the high level stuff that we know kind of already exists in these office spaces. And just some examples of what the signage systems can look like. Some more kind of handmade samples over here, and then some of our favorite bins, these containers where the sign holder is actually connected and attached, so the signs always stay with the bins. And these are actually the bins that we deploy as part of the Business Recycling Champions program. So just a really good example there. Of kind of what those can look like. Then the last step for us is ensuring a sustainable program. So are we having check-ins with stakeholders? Are we checking in with the hauler? Are we checking in with, do we have any kind of touch base set up with our janitorial staff leadership in terms of, is our needs being met? Is the right material making it to the dumpster? Is the green team maybe peeking their head in the dumpster and making sure we're seeing those clear bags, or that the recycling is clean and loose, if that's what the hauler needs? It's a really important part of the program to make sure that stuff is happening, because we don't want a program to fall apart that was spent so much time and effort, working through. And the last thing that Mike wants to hear is that, what he thought was happening in your building isn't what you feel is happening. So again, we can't stress enough, the open lines of communication are a really important part of the program.
Absolutely, Sean, and I'll just jump in real quick with 2 last things. You talking about centralizing collection is such a huge part to this. Like, doing large scale office buildings and cleaning large scale office buildings, there could be 30 to 40, if not more, % of our time is spent underneath desks, where that could be spent in a better way, keeping the building at a higher functioning level, cleaner, all of those things. You might hear a few things from staff for just a little bit, but it's well worth it to the overall health of the facility. And last but not least, it's when you look at your hauling bill, I feel a lot of times, unlike when we talk about water or electricity usage, people don't look at the hauling bill as close as they do other operational costs. And I was just with a big corporation here in town that everybody would know. They had pickups Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I go, do people work on the weekends? And they go, no. So they're having just even one pickup a week that was completely and utterly unnecessary. So I mean, there's cost savings abound when we look at waste.
Yeah, and good. I think like good janitorial teams, because they're the ones who are interacting with the dumpster the most,
Right.
are going to be strong players in that conversation in terms of maybe they can be the ones helping call out like, hey, on Friday or Monday, right? It's never full. Do we really need to have this picked up?
Absolutely.
So I think
Well,
that
and
again,
even talking about a waste audit for facilities, like when you brought up that great graph that you guys had earlier about what goes in there, I can tell you what's coming out of traditional office buildings that have a cafeteria. The vast majority of it is recyclable material and compostable material. There's very little waste that is actually generated in these facilities.
yeah, we highly advocate waste audit, a formal waste audit, if not a visual waste audit. Really important part of the program. So the last thing I want to kind of call out is for us. Um, Unfortunately, businesses have the most work to do. So 60% of our material here in Franklin County is generated out of our business sector. 40% comes from our residential sector. So that's why this topic is so important to us. And we've tried to build all these resources that help support the work in this space, is because we do have the most work to do in this space. So with that, we have kind of reached the end of our webinar here. I know I promised to get you out at 12:30. I do have one question I wanted to get to, and Mike, it's really for you.
Ooh.
We have the kickoff meeting with our janitorial staff, but who and how often should we then maybe be following back up with, the manager or the lead, or if you're in your case, maybe it's you as the owner. How often should we kind of set up? Should there be a cadence? And who on my team should I maybe assign to have that meeting with you to check in and make sure that we're both feeling great about the program?
Sure. You mentioned green teams earlier. I think those are a great start. Obviously, they're involved. They want to be involved, but I try to have a check-in weekly with our clients. If in the world of janitorial, sometimes no news is good news. I understand that in our world. If we're not hearing anything, that means there aren't any issues. But I want to see how consistent again we are, and I think that's also reporting, Sean, with your hauler and getting those weights and seeing if there are any fluctuations in from month to month. And again, you can check these things. I think again, when we're talking about reporting, that's vitally important when we're talking about sustainability in a facility. But I think again, yeah, if the lines of communication, which I know aren't always great with janitorial companies because they're kind of there for the most time when staff and employees are not there. I'd say at least for the first 3 months of the project, it's a bi-weekly at least check-in with janitorial staff. But they're going to be able to see the results. If they just take one stroll out to the dumpster, they're going to start seeing things from that were full in the municipal solid waste dumpster that's full is going to be less and less full as time goes on, and that should always be the case. Um, and then you're going to finally get that kind of point of singularity where they even out, or when they stop, like you finally know, okay, we've maximized our recycling capability here in comparison to our municipal solid waste. And then it's reassessing your hauling contracts, because if you're getting 3 to 5, if not more, pickups a week in your municipal solid waste dumpster, we might be able to reduce that to once or twice a week. Again, that's where we can see cost savings in the end. I think ultimately it's beneficial to everybody involved. I
Yeah,
know that
no,
was a roundabout way of answering your question, Sean, but like for the first few months, I think it's always checking in. That's as a janitorial company, I want to impress. That's what I'm sure everybody tries to do, because it's a difficult world to live in sometimes. How again can I, as a janitorial company, differentiate myself? It's usually through communication and doing things like this. So it might even be setting some parameters of what these are, our company goals, and letting the janitorial team know those things too.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly a great answer is that, early on, weekly, bi-weekly, and then the further out we get from the program being started, we can start to move those out to monthly, quarterly, and then, a further out cadence once we're confident in the program that we've implemented. So I think that's a great call out. Again, thanks everyone for joining us. We've got a few minutes over here, but I think we got pretty close. If you want to reach out, please stay connected. Feel free to email biz@swaco.org. Happy to send an introduction to Mike and his team at Goodland as well for the work that they do if you want to continue the conversation. So thanks so much, and I hope that everyone enjoys their day.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, everybody.